One is to assert some sort of legitimacy for Benjamin Netanyahu as a world leader. I just want to remind the audience that he is somebody who has an arrest warrant out for him because he is a war criminal, a practitioner of genocide. This is a man who is responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinian people. He is the scum of the earth. And yet he was invited to the United States to speak in the people's house before the people's representatives. He wrapped himself in not just the flag of the United States, but the ostensible cloak of legitimacy that entails, that brings out. So this was to, assert him as a legitimate leader. And then the other main goal is to, in doing so, send a signal to the Israeli people that he is the anointed leader of Israel, that America supports, America backs. There are some peripheral things being discussed. He, of course, has a vision that he outlined in his speech. It was pure fantasy, derived from lies, derived from mischaracterizations, and just total manufactured crap. But he had to say that because he had to put a marker down for his constituents back in Israel, the far right wing, that he was fighting for the cause they support. He couldn't come to the United States and articulate something that was not politically supportable by his base. So that any deviation from what he articulated, and there will be major deviations, when he returns to Israel, he can say, I had no choice because America insisted on this. And we need America, and America has picked me to be the leader of Israel during these difficult times, because his coalition will collapse if he, buys into a ceasefire, which he's being pressured to do so by America. So confronting the reality of a collapsed coalition and understanding that without the ability to assemble a new coalition to replace it, his political career is over. And he will probably, at that point in time, spend the rest of his life in jail as a convicted, corrupt leader, unable to leave Israel because he'll be arrested on the spot because he's a war criminal who has committed genocide against the Palestinian people. He is going to do his best to remain politically viable. Right now, the only way he can do that is to wrap himself in the American flag and say, I am the anointed one, the one that the United States, and this ridiculous show in the people's house, having American leaders who have lost all morality, all sense of right and wrong, applaud him as if this was a replay of the Soviet Central Committee of the Communist Party back in the Cold War.
We thought that he's going to ask for some sort of permission to go after Hezbollah, but he was talking more about Iran, and he wants a war with Iran. Do you think he's really serious in what he's talking about?
No, of course not. He's not serious. He can't have a war with Hezbollah because he will lose a war with Hezbollah, and he can't have a war with Iran because he will lose a war with Iran. It's not serious. Nobody in the United States is taking this seriously. Yes, we have the fringe kooks on the right and the fringe kooks on the left, both of whom meet in the same spot because they are unabashed supporters of this Zionist criminal entity we call Israel. But nobody's going to war with Hezbollah or Iran. That's the way to a death sentence for Israel there is. He was playing to the base. There will be no war with Iran. There will be no war with Hezbollah. It just isn't going to happen. It's a fantasy on his part. The Israeli Defense Force has said, we can't do this. We are out of tanks. We are out of spare parts. We are out of ammunition. We can't defeat Hezbollah. We can't defeat Hamas. So when you have your military saying this, what makes you think that he's going to go forward with campaigns that are destined to end in not just the a minor defeat of Israel, but the strategic defeat of Israel, the physical destruction of Israel? No, it's just all words for the base.
Don't you think that is a desperate attempt on his part? Because after a military operation that wasn't successful in Gaza, and they're shifting to Hezbollah. Right now, it's the Biden administration said to them that if you go after Hezbollah, we're not going to be there to help you. You have to do it by yourself. And right now they're shifting to Iran. It seems that they're hoping that if they pick a bigger fight with Iran, that could bring the United States into the conflict.
No, it's stupid. And the United States has already told him, we're not playing this game. Don't you remember April? When Iran attacked Israel in retaliation for the Israel criminal action that took place in Damascus, where they violated international law by bombing a diplomatically protected facility of the Iranian on Syrian soil. What was the response? A massive attack by Iran against Israel, 9 missiles of which penetrated the impenetrable defense shield, hitting the targets they were designated to hit in Israeli air bases, sending a signal that we can do this anytime we want to. Israel said we have to respond. What did America say? Good luck, because you ain't getting our help. You want to know why America said that? Because back when President Trump assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the Iranians retaliated against the American forces at the Al-Assad air base in Iraq, firing missiles that penetrated the American defense shield and hit their targets with a precision that shocked America. Mr. Donald Trump, the toughest guy in the world, the tough guy doesn't back down, sat in silence because there's nothing he could say, because Iran put a marker on the table that said, if you want to take this to the next step, every single one of your facilities in the Middle East will be hit with the same level of lethal precision. So Trump just shut up. And that lesson carried over to the Biden administration. They know what the outcome would be of a conflict with Iran. So they're not going to back Israel's insane desire. This is Benjamin Netanyahu. Look, there's a reason why he's a war criminal. It's because he's insane. He's been insane from day one. This is a man who's so far detached from reality, it's not even funny. He's also a political operative that's shown a proclivity for surviving in scenarios where most politicians would not. He's playing a very dangerous political game. But the United States has made it as crystal clear as possible. They're not going to be sucked into a conflict with Iran. There's zero chance of that happening. Zero chance. Let me remind everybody, we thought we could intimidate the Houthi, that we could compel them through force of arms in stopping their blockade against Israel. We failed. We continue to fail. And that military that failed against the Houthi is supposed to somehow defeat Iran? Go smoke more dope. It isn't going to happen.
At the same time, Scott, when we are witnessing that Putin is bringing Erdogan and Bashar al-Assad together, China is bringing all these groups in Palestine together to make some sort of agreement among them. And you see Netanyahu just talking about war in the US Congress. How do you picture this Russia and China trying to bring some sort of agreement, and the United States, everybody's applauding Netanyahu for bringing more wars?
Well, I mean, basically, we see the stark contrast between the American approach towards global affairs and the approach by the Russians, the Chinese, and others. Dwight D. Eisenhower set the stage for this in his farewell address, where he warned the American people back in 1961 about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He said, if we allow our society to continue to be dominated by this, it will forever change and destroy American democracy. And that's where we are today, because this facade of democracy we call the United States of America is little more than a war machine. Our economy, our society, our politics, the way we interface with the world is all defined by conflict, because that's what a military-industrial complex demands. War is the lifeblood of the American system. We can't succeed, we can't function unless they have conflict. We need conflict, so we promote conflict. That's why you see what you see here. Russia and China, on the other hand, aren't addicted to their respective military industrial complexes. They haven't been injecting that heroin into their veins. They believe in diplomacy. They believe in nonviolent resolutions to complex problems. And they've shown that it succeeds. After all, it was the Russians and the Chinese that brought the Saudis and the Iranians together. It's the Russians and the Chinese that have brought the various Palestinian factions together to create a fusion system that cannot be rejected by Israel or the United States on the grounds that it is Hamas dominated. And now you have Putin doing his best to bring an end to a conflict in Syria that was created by the United States. The United States created this. The United States made the Syrian conflict happen. The United States poured billions into that because we are a war machine addicted to war. That's all we know how to do. We do not know how to make peace. Peace is actually poison to us because if there's peace, the war machine isn't being fed. But the Russians and the Chinese don't operate that way. But here's the difference. The Russians, Chinese don't care about America anymore. They simply don't care. I mean, America's there, can't ignore it. But the day where they had to say, well, we can't do this because America opposes it is over. They don't care. Not only that, by promoting peace, they're going to watch America, this addict to war, go into withdrawals. Because without the conflict to feed it. I mean, look again. Look at Netanyahu. What passed for a peace plan under Donald Trump in the Middle East? The Abrams Accords. The Abrams Accords is a big peace plan. No, it was a war. It literally was a system designed to promote conflict between Sunni and Shia, with Israel siding on the side of the Sunni. That's all it was. The Abrams Accord was not a peace plan. It was designed to suppress the national ambitions of the Palestinians while creating a political, economic alliance to oppose the Shia Crescent, the axis of resistance. When I say oppose, I mean oppose violently, to create an economic system that would buy more American weapons. That's what it was all about. And it's dead. It's gone. It's finished. And so what's Netanyahu's response? More Abrams, double down on Abrams. But the region, the world, China, Russia, they're not playing that game because they recognize peace is the only path forward. Peace is the only path forward. If you choose war, all you get is death and destruction. For America, that's what we feed on. We feed on the death and destruction of others. We promote the wars abroad. That's all we do. Think about it. Around the world, show me one place where America's promoting peace. One. It's just a challenge out there. Where? What? It doesn't exist. We don't know how to do it because we are addicted to war. And so the Russians and the Chinese are simply pushing us off to the side, and they're promoting peace. And nations are deciding that they don't want the war, the death, the destruction that the United States offers, because that's all America offers. They want peace. They want prosperity. This is the victory of diplomacy over militarism. In America, the only way we're going to save ourselves is to buy into the same thing. Now, this is going to require a radical transformation that we're not ready to undertake. Maybe we need to have some sort of collapse where the edifice of conflict just totally breaks down, and then we can rebound and rebuild as part of a global system. But as long as we think we are the essential nation, the world can't live without us. We're America, but what we mean is that we can't live without the world being at war. That's what it's about. That's what American hegemony is about. One nation surrounded by global conflict, and that conflict feeds us, sustains us, defines us. I think the world's tired of that, and they're walking away.
When Netanyahu is talking about we, Israel and the United States, together with our Arab friends, we can fight Iran. Do you think he considers that if he goes after Iran, if he pick a fight with Iran, that Saudi Arabia and UAE going to be on his part?
Let me correct your question. You mean when the genocidal war criminal at the head of the apartheid, illegitimate Zionist state of Israel? Let's stop talking about Netanyahu as he's somehow legitimate. The man is an insane war criminal. He's the scum of the earth. And like any criminal in a desperate situation, he plots more crimes. He's looking for collaborators in his criminal activity. No, no one will align with Israel. That's what Israel is starting to learn as a nation. They are fundamentally isolated because the entire world sees them for what they are, an illegitimate Zionistic apartheid state committing criminal acts of genocide against the Palestinian people. So let's stop saying Netanyahu. I spit when I say his name. He's the scum of the earth. He should never have been allowed into my country, into my house, the people's house, the Congress of the United States. He should never received applause from a single representative of the American people, because we are not supposed to be a nation that promotes genocide. And yet that's what we have become, apologists for genocide, not just cheerleaders for genocide. Screw Benjamin Netanyahu. Nothing he says is linked to reality. Nothing. He can hope, he can want. It's not going to happen. As I told you, that speech was intended to mollify the base back in Israel. There's no real plan there. Saudi Arabia isn't going to jump. Saudi Arabia has bought into BRICS. Okay? That is the future of Saudi Arabia. BRICS, peaceful coexistence, economic expansion, not buying into the war and conflict-driven relationships of the past, but a new future. The same with the United Arab Emirates. That's their future. They're not going to go backwards, and definitely not for a scum like Netanyahu. They're not going to align themselves with a genocidal state. That's insane. Saudi Arabia will never back genocide against the Palestinian people. And that's what Netanyahu is saying he wants. The United Arab Emirates will never back genocide against the Palestinian people. But that's the fantasy world that Netanyahu lives in. This criminal, this scum, this genocidal maniac.
Yeah. How did you find the Kamala Harris policy in not going to the US Congress and later on meeting with Netanyahu?
How did you find it? Because you just described sort of a self-contradictory thing. It explains Kamala Harris. She is nothing. We're watching a movie. I just hope everybody understands that. We're not watching some spontaneous, political revival by this underdog, this wonderful human being who is going to redefine American politics. She's a failed politician. You do know that she ran for president in 2020 and got kicked out of the Democratic primary early because she sucks. She's a horrible human being. Tulsi Gabbard showed that to the entire world during the debate. She calls herself a prosecutor, but she's a prosecutor who kept people in jail when they didn't deserve to be in jail. She used it for her own economic advantage and political advantage in California. She belongs in jail. She's somebody that the American people don't support, never have, never will. She is the literal definition of a DEI hire. Because Joe Biden in 2020 said, I'm going to appoint a Black woman as my vice president. My God, what about appointing the best possible person to be your vice president? Now, there might be a Black woman out there who is the best possible person. But when you start off by saying, I'm going to appoint a Black woman, and then you pick Kamala Harris, who got booted from the Democratic primary because she sucks as a candidate, she sucks as a human being, that is a DEI hire. And then look at her vice president. She's accomplished nothing. Nothing. Any successes Biden might be able to say he's done were done because of Biden, because of the establishment, not because of Kamala Harris. She contributed nothing to the cause. Now, he said, I'm going to be a one-term president. I'm here to save American democracy. Now, I'm going to pass the baton off to the next generation. And the next generation, of course, is Kamala Harris, his DEI hire. Except he decided he's not going to be a one-term president. I'm going to stay the course. Got to save democracy. Now, I'm saying it a lot more forcefully than he would. He would go, I'm making fun of a brain-dead, senile old man. I shouldn't do that. But that's the reality. The American president is cognitively not with us in this earth. He went through a primary where he was the candidate. 15 million Americans voted for him to be the candidate. Kamala Harris was not on the ballot. Go back. How many times did he mention Kamala Harris while he was running? Where was she? Was she there campaigning with him? Was it Biden Harris? No, she was the hell away because she sucks. She's horrible. And then he comes in and he says, I will not resign under any circumstances unless God whispers in my ear or there's a medical condition. We don't know why he backed off. They're not being transparent. This was a coup d'etat. They went in and there was a coup where he was pressured into resigning. And Kamala Harris now has been promoted to the candidate and nobody voted for her. She's selected, not elected. The living manifestation of a DEI hire. So we're going through this little honeymoon period. It's all a script. It's a movie script, scripted by the same people, by the way, who gave us the 2020 election. Oh, Scott, you're going into conspiracy. I don't know. Read Time magazine. Read Time magazine and see how all these non-democratic elements, all these social media players, all these unelected officials brag about how they used extra constitutional means to guarantee Joe Biden's victory. Is that the way America's supposed to operate, with a shadow element out there putting their thumb on the scale extra constitutionally? Some people would say in certain circumstances unconstitutionally, because they doctored state laws, took advantage of the pandemic to promote, mail-in ballots when the system wasn't ready for it. I'm telling you right now, this was a stolen election, 100% stolen by an elite that couldn't win if the normal rules were applied. That's the truth. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. That same elite right now is seeking to do a similar manipulation of the American democratic process by having Kamala Harris put into a position that she could not have gotten to had she gone through the normal processes. She would have lost a primary this year had she been the candidate. The Democrats would have run away from her so fast. They would have dumped her so fast. So the system instead played games, and now she's there. She's there. This is all theater. Everything that's being done is for theater. Unfortunately for the Democrats, it's only July. And this movie ain't going to run successfully, at least, until November. At some point in time, the real Kamala Harris will emerge. And she will be recognized for what she is, a DEI hire, unqualified for the job. Maybe there's a black woman out there. I know there's a black woman out there that could be president of the United States. I know there is. And the Democrats should be seeking her out if they want a black woman. But they have to take that black woman and put her before the American people and make her earn their vote, make her earn their trust. Kamala's earned nothing. The literal definition of a DEI hire.
When you look at Netanyahu suggesting that these people who are protesting outside the building are paid by Iran to do that, don't you think that he's trying to buy the American policymakers into a rhetoric that is not anywhere near the truth?
I mean, there's no doubt he's trying to get the United States to double down on its anti-Iranian policies. That's not really the issue here, though. The issue is that a foreign leader, a war criminal, a genocidal maniac, was speaking at the People's House and daring to criticize American citizens for exercising their constitutional right of free speech, freedom of assembly. Their duty and responsibility as citizens to gather and protest when they feel something needs to be protested. And if you're not gathering to protest a genocidal maniac speaking in the People's House, then you're not much of an American, are you? And the people that were in the Congress applauding this madman, this maniac, this genocidal murderer, sat there and let him criticize Americans for doing what they believe was their constitutional duties. I mean, that's what's really at here. I don't care about Iran. I mean, I do care about Iran, but what I mean, who cares what Benjamin Netanyahu thinks about Iran? Do you think the Iranians lost much sleep over his speech? No. I think they looked at it and they realized this is a defeated man. Do you think that, Iran has been dealing with America for some time now? They've already taken America to the brink. They've already taken Israel to the brink. They're not going to sit there and lose any sleep over stupid political games being played as an act of theater in the American Congress. There's nothing of substance that happened there when it comes to Iran. No policies will be changed. No policies will be influenced by Netanyahu's pathetic little speech. But the insult that he delivered to the American people via the United States Congress, a compliant Congress that apparently Netanyahu believes he is bought and paid for, and by their actions in response to inviting this genocidal murderer to their house to speak, proves that they are bought and paid by Israel. The insult he had to the American people. Because again, I have watched people demonstrate in the streets of the United States for a long time. And I'll tell you, the vast majority of them I don't agree with. I wouldn't be side by side with them demonstrating for their cause. No, not at all. I would hold opposite opinions. But I would be the first one out there to protect their right to demonstrate, because that is the point. It's not what they're demonstrating. That's important to them. It's the fact that they can demonstrate that makes America the country that it is. And therefore, it is the duty and responsible of every American, whether you agree with these pro-Palestinian demonstrators or not, to shield them from attacks like the one that was leveled by Benjamin Netanyahu while he spoke in the people's house to the representatives of the people. Where were the members of Congress to stand up and shout him down when he said that? Shut up, they should have said. Shut up. You don't get to talk about freedom of speech and freedom of assembly in America. Get out of here, rush the stage, tackle him, remove him, evict him. But don't sit there and applaud while he attacks the Constitution of the United States, because that's what he did. And it just shows how feckle and baseless America has become when the people's representatives in the people's house allow such an attack to take place.
When they're talking about Iran, it seems that the intelligence in the United States and in Israel, they're giving some information to the leaders that Iran, if we fight Iran, we can defeat all of these groups in the Middle East. But it doesn't seem that would be the case. Do you think that if something happens to Iran, all these groups will disappear? Is Iran ordering them to do things, or they have their will to do that?
Oh, first of all, the will exists, independent of Iran. Hezbollah would be resisting Israel, independent of Iran. Hamas would be resisting Israel, independent of Iran. The Houthi would be resisting Israel, independent of Iran. The Shia militias in Syria and Iraq would be resisting Israel, independent of Iran. But let's not fool ourselves into believing that Iran isn't a critical aspect of the axis of resistance. Iran is a major power, a huge regional power. And Iran emboldens them with their political support and empowers them with their military and financial support. So Iran is a critical element. But let's talk about, how do you defeat Iran? How do you defeat Iran? I mean, the speculation that Iran can be defeated by Israel, by the United States, is absurd. We've been trying for years. We're continuing to try today. Iran has shown a surprising resilience. There are problems in Iran. We saw that in the last election. The low turnout shows that people are losing confidence in the system. Does the system best represent us? Now, they've elected a new president who, some people would say is a moderate reformer. I think you're not going to see any change in his foreign policy, but I do think you're going to see Iran start to reconsider some of its domestic policies, especially when it comes to women and how women are treated in Iran, because the people demand it. There are a certain element of current conservatives who, of course, will support the conservative, you know, suppression of women in Iran. But I think the majority of people are starting to say, no, women have to be allowed to express themselves more freely than the current system allows. And I think you're seeing a recognition. And the fact that this man was allowed to enter the ballot, given the positions he have, the fact that the supreme leader has recognized him as the leader, because the supreme leader, even though the vote happened, the supreme leader, who is the final say on the Islamic Republic, could have said, no, he's incompatible with Islam, incompatible with our vision of Islam. But instead he said, yes, this is the man, which means that Iran is ready for a certain element of reforms. But that's the struggle here. Iran's not going to balk at its commitment to the axis of resistance. They're winning. I mean, what part of their winning? They are literally evicting America from the region as we speak. The American Navy cannot operate freely anymore. It doesn't have the same deterrent value anymore. And the Iranians have solidified this axis of resistance, and most importantly, from my interpretation, they've inflicted fatal damage on Israel. This is the moment of the ultimate victory that's approaching, because Israel has been fatally damaged. Israel will not survive what is happening right now. If Israel's smart, they'll go into the long death, which allows for a relatively nonviolent collapse of the Zionist entity and the normal absorption of whatever is left into a singular state known as Palestine. If they're stupid, they can accelerate this process by going to war against Hezbollah and Iran. Then they'll be physically destroyed. But the end result will be the same: a singular entity known as Palestine, not Israel. Israel's dead. And this is because of Iran, because of the axis of resistance. So any idea of weakening the axis and all that, the implication is that Iran's not winning, that Iran is somehow weak, that Iran is vulnerable. That's a fantasy world. The reality is that it's Israel that's vulnerable. It's the United States that's weak, because Israel and the United States aren't winning. They're losing. John Boyd's OODA loop in the Orient, observe, orient, decide, act, decision-making cycle. The idea there is to get inside your enemies or your adversaries' decision-making cycle, to make them react to you. Well, just take a look at what's been happening in the Middle East. Who's reacting to whom? Who has the initiative? It ain't the United States and it ain't Israel. They're reacting. If this was a dogfight between fighter aircraft, America and the Israelis would be shot down every time. If this was maneuver warfare on a large scale, we'd be outmaneuvered every time and defeated. And this is the same place in terms of geopolitics. The United States and Israel are reacting, and every time they react, they bleed off speed, they bleed off capability, they increase their own friction. Meanwhile, Iran, the axis of resistance, is initiating when they want to initiate. It's a frictionless transition. The more friction, the slower you get. The less friction, the faster you get. Inside the decision-making cycle, Iran is prevailing. The axis of resistance is prevailing. So that's the reality. Any discussion in the West about weakening Iran, it's absurd. It's fantasy driven.